There he is. All right, Coach Ron.
Hey, Dan, how you doing? Hey, Carlos.
Great.
How are you, Coach?
Great. We got Carlos, and he's my guy we go to when we've got football. Los knows a lot of football. Love to have his knowledge on. So he says, let's get him on with you, Ron. Great to have you. I know we had some issues technical. We got them resolved. Yeah. You're here. So great to have you.
I appreciate it. I owe you a little bit more time at some point, though, but that's on me. I apologize.
All right.
No worries.
Well, hey, I thought we'd get right into it. We'd as the chat goes wild, Riverboat Ron. All right. So, Ron, I know you you played ball at, was it Seaside High School?
Yep.
Yep. Near Monterey, and then you were recruited and. You chose Cal. Did you have? You must have had 100 choices to go to. Did it come down to anybody else besides Cal?
I actually had 20 scholarship offers, and I turned down Michigan, Ohio State, Notre Dame all on the same day. Turned USC and UCLA down on the same day, and decided on Cal mostly because I really had a great recruiting trip there. I really did. They really did sell me on the future. It was bright, and it's crazy. It's in the 1979, the big game. I had gone to the game as a guest of Stanford University, and as you know, Cal wins on a great play by Ron Cucciamilio in the end zone. And so what happened was I had gone over to the Stanford locker room after the game, and it was down because they had just lost, and so. I said my hellos and goodbyes, and as I was walking out, my family, my parents and I, we were headed out. We just happened to go by the Cal locker room, and just as I was walking by, a couple of the coaches were coming out, and they recognized me right away and came over and started talking to me, brought me into the locker room, and the guys were going crazy inside the locker room because they had just beat Stanford, and it was a big deal, obviously, and they were bowl eligible, the whole bit. And I got caught up in that euphoria, too, as well. So, it was all about timing, I guess.
Wow, that's great. I remember that game. I was sitting in the end zone behind that play that Ron. That was from Turk Schonert.
Yep.
Threw it, and he just was right there. Just kind of batted the ball, reached over around him, knocked it down, and the game was over. Yeah.
Coach, I wanted to pivot here because I know when you're brought on for interviews, you're asked 97% of the time about football. So I'm going to throw you a little curve here and ask you about Puerto Rico's finest and your idol. As I was reading, the great Roberto Clemente, who was my favorite player growing up. We're in Bay Area County, so it's Willie Mays and Barry Bonds, respectfully and understandably so. But tell us about your love for Roberto Clemente growing up.
Well, my father's Puerto Rican. He's from Bayamon, Puerto Rico, and so everything Puerto Rican, was something that I leaned towards, and getting to know who Roberto Clemente was really a cool thing. We were actually in Panama in the early '70s. My dad was stationed down there in Fort Gulick, Panama, on the Atlantic side of the Canal Zone. And so we got a lot of news as to what was going on in Puerto Rico, what was going on with Roberto when he was playing for the Pirates. And then, unfortunately, when the earthquake in Managua, Nicaragua hit, on a humanitarian mission, the plane that he was in, unfortunately, crashed and he perished. And it was a very, very sad day for me personally, but a very, very sad day for the island of Puerto Rico as well. And they mourned his loss. And it was a tremendous loss because of who he was, not just as a baseball player, but as a humanitarian, as a man, as a father, and as a husband. So it was tough, but boy, I idolized everything about him. I really did. And I played baseball growing up. I was a catcher for the most part, and I wanted to emulate him, and he really was my hero.
Absolutely.
Wow. Yeah, sure. I loved Roberto, number 21. Yeah, he was awesome. Yeah, and amazingly, he passed away the last game that he played. He got his 3,000th hit.
Yes,
I think, and which is a milestone in baseball.
Huge,
automatic.
Huge
Yeah, automatic entry to the Hall of Fame. But even if he didn't get it, but it's still a milestone. So now, did you meet Stephanie, your wife, at Cal?
Yes. Yes.
That's
Well,
great.
I was very fortunate. Decided to go to the University of California, Berkeley. A lot of things went my way. I was very fortunate in terms of playing football, getting the opportunity to play. And Stephanie and I met going into my senior year. I decided to take summer school classes. That's a great story too. I can remember I went in to see Dave Maggard. Mr. Maggard was the athletic director, and I went in and I said, Mr. Maggard, I want to take summer school. And he looks at me and he goes, let me check. And he was checking in my academic standing. And he said, Ron, you're not in academic trouble. I said, no. I said, Mr. Maggard, what I want to do is I want to get ahead this summer. I want to take 3 courses, get them out of the way. That way, my last year at Cal, I could take the minimum load during the football season. And that way I could And so that's what I did. I went ahead and I took 3 classes, passed all 3. I got an A and 2 Bs. And it's crazy because, in summer school, all I did was I would get up early, I would go work out, shower up, go to class, finish classes, then go work out again. I was working out twice a day. And I did that for the entire length of the summer, going right into training camp. And man, it was, I just felt like I was in the best shape of my life ever.
That's great. That's great. Now, as I was reading, she's got American Filipino descent.
Yes. Her
that's
grandfather,
great.
Her grandfather came over from the Philippines. He was in the United States Navy. He was a chief petty officer, and they settled into the Bay Area. So, so Stephanie was local. That summer when I was going to summer school, her and I got the opportunity to meet. We met at Yogurt Park, and it's kind of cool because every time we go back to Cal and we're together, we go to Yogurt Park.
That's great.
We do. And we started dating that summer, and 6 months later we got engaged, and a year and a half later we got married. So
that's great. Yeah. My wife, I've been married. We've been married 6 years, and I got married in the Philippines. She's straight from the Philippines. Yeah. So.
Right on. Oh, that's
beautiful. I'm super blessed. Yeah.
The home cooked meals, obviously outstanding. But when you want to go out to eat, like the East Coast, not quite the Bay Area for Filipino cuisine.
Yeah. It's not. But there are a couple of spots, believe it or not, that do. There is a breakfast spot that does the Filipino. The Filipino rice for breakfast. Vinegar. Oh yeah. I'll tell you what, for breakfast, there's nothing like Filipino fried rice, and my wife makes. Excellent. And so I do have a hankering for it. Adobo, my
adobo,
which is fabulous.
Yes,
it really is. So
I just turned Dan on a Loco Moco a couple months ago. He loves it now.
No way.
Yeah.
There's a place in my hometown area in Seaside, California, where I went to high school. It's called Butter. And what it is it's a breakfast and lunch place, Filipino cuisine for the most part. Loco Moco is probably their number 1 breakfast dish. I mean, it is crazy.
Yeah, it's good.
Good. And it's crazy because it's 7 days a week. There's a line.
Oh, I bet.
And so the Butter House is just an unbelievable place in Seaside, California for breakfast.
Yeah. So your playing career, you obviously All-American in high school. You go to Cal, you become Defensive Player of the Year. I think it was in '83 in the Pac-10 at the time. You're consensus All-American. Then you get drafted by the Chicago Bears in '84, second round. And you get to play for the great Buddy Ryan, the 4-6 defense. Tell us about playing for Coach Ryan and then playing alongside of guys like Singletary and Wilbur Marshall and
Otis Wilson.
Otis. Yeah, I mean, you guys were stacked in the lineup. Obviously, that was you didn't start in the '85, but tell us what that year was like and with Coach Ryan.
Well, getting drafted in '84, and playing for Mike Ditka was something special. My education as a defensive player really began playing for Buddy Ryan, and it was an amazing thing because Buddy, not only did he coach you, but he taught you. and it was your job, your task to learn the game and learn the defense. And he put it to us. He really did. He was tremendous in terms of game planning, knowing how to attack his opponent, doing the things that he wanted to do. And he was really good at it. I mean, he was special. He really was. He would break you down, tear you down, and build you back up. And you thought you knew the game getting there. No, you didn't. Not the way he knew it. And so he got after you. He pushed you. And it was a lot like what Coach Dicka did. You know, I can remember one time, you know, going into Coach Dicka's office and asking him, hey, why, you know, because a lot of guys come to me and say, hey, you know, why don't you go talk to Coach? Hey, what's going on? So I go in one day and I said to him, I said, Mike, I said, what's going on? I mean, you're pushing us. I mean, this is the hottest summer training camp we've ever had here. And I mean, you just keep pushing and pushing, and he's kind of wearing thin on the guys. And he said, Ronnie, let me tell you something. If I didn't think you guys could handle it, and I know this, I had to handle it, then I did it. I believe you guys can. If I didn't think you could, I wouldn't push you the way I'm pushing you. I just want y'all to be the best. And that's when I realized that the head coach sets the standard. Okay, he sets it, and all he was doing was living up to his standard. He was a Hall of Famer, and that's the difference. I think that a lot of people don't understand is that guys like Mike Dick, you know, guys like that, and Buddy Ryan should be in the Hall of Fame too. You know, for what he did as a coach and as a defensive coordinator, but guys like that have a high standard. I mean, those guys they're impressive people. They really are. And believe me, getting the chance to play for them both was really cool. But man, I learned so much defense from Buddy Ryan. It was an amazing thing. And he used to test you. He would test you every day. He would test you during practice. He would test you in meetings. He'd test you during the game. He wanted to make sure you were all in and you were learning and growing. So it was really a cool deal. It really was. I really had a great time learning from him.
Coach, in 1984, when you came out in the draft, every college kid, when they're about to be drafted, if they're asked the question, you know, where would you like to go? They're going to give the proverbial company line. Oh, just anybody that wants me. Everybody wants me. But deep down, was there a team or two that you really were hoping that would take you?
Well, you know, I thought at one point the 49ers might take me. That would have been really cool. The Raiders was the other one. I mean, I was a local guy. Even though my dad was in the Army and we traveled all over the world with him, home for us was California. And a big part of the reason I went to Berkeley was because it was so close. It was an hour and 45 minutes from my parents' house. And, you know, when you travel around the world, your first coaches are your parents, your best teammates are your brothers. And that's what it was for me. So it gave me a chance to I thought it would have been great to either play in Oakland or play in San Francisco and just kind of continue to be close to home. And it didn't work out that way. I ended up going to the Midwest, being in Chicago. It was a tremendous opportunity for me. I mean, I played 9 seasons there, started my coaching career there as well, you know. So I got the opportunity to play, became a starter in 86, and then, you know, retired in 92. So after a 92 season, you know, 9 years, I was very fortunate. I really was, and I enjoyed every moment of it. I really did, and being part of, you know, what arguably is one of the greatest teams in the NFL history was the '85 Bears. It's a pretty cool argument.
Yeah, absolutely. Now you mentioned you went through 9 seasons, obviously 9 training camps. We're seeing players hold out today. You've had players hold out when you were coaching. Brandon Aiyuk signed today.
Yep.
And the question, what is it like? Would you have rather been able to just play, you know, the last couple of weeks of camp as a player, or did you enjoy the rigorous 5-6 weeks of camp before the first game?
You know, it's a different mentality. It's a different way. You know, when we played back in the day, and you had the true doubles 2-a-days, you know, everybody went through them. Everybody did. Everybody was going 2-a-days. And so really there was no advantage or disadvantage to going through training camp. The disadvantage back then of not going through training camp would have been you wouldn't have been physically prepared in terms of, you know, taking the hits and all that stuff. But in today's world, I mean, quite honestly, most of these guys, I'm going to say probably 85%, if not more, of these guys are in tip-top shape year-round. A guy like Brandon Aiyuk is probably ready to roll already. I mean, he's probably done everything he's needed to do to keep himself in shape. He's been working, getting himself prepared for the moment that once it's done, he's ready to hit the ground running. They had a week of practice this week. There's no games this weekend, so everybody's resting up, getting themselves ready. And I promise you, Brandon's going to do everything he can to go out there and do the things he needs to do. I mean, he is one of the elite wide receivers in this league, and deservedly so. He got what he had earned.
Yeah. Now the other holdout, of course, is well because he played for you, Trent Williams. Mm-hmm. What was that? In fact, I think maybe you were somewhat instrumental in helping make the trade from Washington to San Francisco. How did that come about?
Well, what happened was actually I never got to coach Trent. Trent was on the team when I got there, but he had just gone through a dispute with the previous regime, and he was ready to get out. We tried to convince him to stay, but I think for the most part, it was in the tea leaves that he was ready to go. And so during the draft, we get a phone call, and we start talking and negotiating with them and with John and Kyle, and it was one of those things that knowing that Trent had already played for Kyle and Coach Shanahan, his father at Washington, so he was very, very familiar. I mean, it's interesting because when you look at their style of offense, Trent Williams is the kind of player that offense thrives with. And you'd almost argue that that he's just as important as the quarterback, because he is the perfect fit for what they do. And I know they want to get it done, and they got to figure out how to get it done. But he is a special player, and it's a good situation for them. We've seen him play the last few years in that system that Kyle has, and he's just been dominant.
Coach, I got a question about the 46 defense, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
It's a defense that obviously, and I understand you have to have the right personnel to run it. And that's one of the reasons it was as dominant as it was for the Bears in the mid to late 80s. But my question is more like, did offensive coordinators start figuring out weaknesses about that defense eventually? Because you don't hear about the 46 defense at all over the last, 3 decades. And to follow up with that, did his sons who coached, did they coach that defense, or was that just a buddy thing?
No. Both Rob and Rex implemented it in their systems and had a lot of success with it, and as good as we were in 85, Buddy had put together a pretty doggone good group in Philadelphia, and everybody remembers, unfortunately, the great Jerome Brown was killed in the auto accident.
Right.
And that, and he was a tremendous player, and he really fit what they did. So that was a very unfortunate set of circumstances. But what's really interesting about the way that defense is, more than anything else, it really is about the personnel. If you've got the personnel, you got the guys, you can be very good at it. As an offensive play caller, as a coordinator, trying to figure out where the blitz is coming from, how to pick it up. As those things started to happen, people started learning how to do those things. It did change the way people used it. And in today's world, with so many 3-4 defenses, you see some flashes of people trying to emulate some of the 46. And the whole idea behind that is, you go into a double eagle, you bring basically both your defensive ends down, and you put them, on the outside shade of the guards in a reduced look. And you have a nose head up for the most part, playing it and playing his directions based off of his reads. And then you have, your middle linebacker. And this is what people don't understand, and this is where it was different. When Gary Fensick used to come down in the defense, Gary would come down to the strong side because he was protected by the 2 linebackers on that side and the 3 technique. Mike Singletary would go to the opposite side of it. And for the most part, he would line up to that side. And he was kind of the unprotected guy, a little more stout than a safety coming into the box. And that was one of the big differences. But you also had to be a very smart football player. And Gary Fensick was one of the smartest guys I've ever been around. Tremendous football player. Mike Singletary was as smart as they came as well. And then you talk about the fact that you look at up front, Steve McMichael, Richard Dent, Dan Hampton, and Mike Singletary, all four are Hall of Famers.
Yep.
And you can make the argument for Wilbur Marshall, Gary Fensick as well. I mean, those two guys were
Dave
very
Durst,
instrumental.
your strong safety, right?
Yep, Dave was a strong safety as well, and we had some pretty good guys. So, we were built for that.
Yeah, that was, and then you started in your third year?
Yes, in '86, Otis got hurt in the last third of the season. I came in, and from that point on, I ended up starting and had the opportunity to play, and just really, it was really a cool thing to get that opportunity, that chance. I lined up next to Mike Singletary. That's pretty cool. I mean, it's got Dan Hampton, Steve McMichael, Richard Dent, and William the Refrigerator Perry in front of you. You got to have a chance to make some tackles, and it was pretty cool. It really was.
Now we're here in the Bay Area, so we got a lot of diehard Niner fans watching. Mm-hmm. What was it like preparing for the '88 NFC Championship with Bill Walsh as head coach? Is it anything similar to preparing for Kyle today?
It is, because he was. Bill Walsh was really a mastermind in terms of the way they did things on offense. And then the thing that people got to also remember too is look at the quarterback he had. I mean, arguably one of the greatest clutch players ever, in Joe Montana. And so you would think you have an answer, and then something else would come up. You would overset to one side, and then figure we're going to roll into this, and Joe goes and works to the backside away from where you put all your defensive players. So they studied it, they learned it, they knew how to attack it and how to beat it, and it was I mean, it was tough. It really was. I mean, there was a stretch where arguably we saw the greatest offensive team in the NFL and it was right there in front of us with Joe Montana leading it.
Yeah.
Coach, that was I watched that game recently. I like to go back and watch older games, but minus 33-degree wind chill. Is that the coldest game you've ever played in Soldier Field?
Yeah, it really was the coldest one I ever played. And now what was crazy about that one too, more so than anything else, was we really had a good week of practice. We really did. We were pretty fired up. And I think we underestimated how, because we thought going into that game the weather was going to be a factor for us. It was going to be on our side. Freaking Joe threw 4 touchdown passes that game or something like that. It was 28-7, wasn't it, or something?
28-3.
28-3. But he threw 4. I think he threw 4 touchdown passes, and it was just and it was. I mean, it was hard. The weather was tough, and it didn't seem to bother Joe one bit.
Earlier that year, you beat him on Monday night 10-9.
Yep.
And the story was that Walsh said, well, I was concerned about their pass rush, so I was very conservative with only 2 guys going out in the route. I wanted to max protect. We're going to send 4 guys out in the route, and if Joe gets hit, Joe gets hit. So we're going to send guys because we think their back 4 secondary is not as strong as their front 7. So I guess they had a little bit of a different game plan, and Joe put some throws through the wind that got there.
And we were nicked up that game, and not to make an excuse, but the pass rush wasn't the same either. Dent was nicked up. I know Hamp was hampered. We just didn't have the rush that we had earlier in the year, and that's why it was a 10-9 game. And so he took advantage of that, and they exploited it, and they were right. I mean, they attacked our guys, and we struggled.
Interesting. Now, moving on, you got into coaching. You started doing linebackers coach, I believe, and then you became defensive coordinator of the then San Diego Chargers. I still want to call them the San Diego Chargers for some reason.
Yeah.
But that was you did that in let's see, what years were you in San Diego? It was I was looking at it earlier. Okay, there you go. Defensive coordinator. You started out as the Bears in 04 to 06. Then you moved to linebackers coach, and then D coordinator from 08 to 10 with the Chargers. and that catapulted you to becoming the head coach of the Carolina Panthers for 9 seasons from 2011 to 19, and then the Redskins Commanders. An interesting stat that I did not know, you were the only coach in NFL history to take 2 losing teams and have them have winning seasons. Nobody's ever done that but you, Ron.
Well, what's interesting was, for me in my circumstances of my growth and development, I got an opportunity to be on Andy Reid's original coaching staff. I was on that staff in Philadelphia. If you look at it too, off of that staff, I think there's 8 of us that became head coaches, and 2 of those guys have won Super Bowls. So he's, Coach has got a very successful tree of coaches that have come, from that original coaching staff. So it's really a cool thing. It really is. But, and then from there, obviously getting my opportunity in Chicago, that was a really cool deal. Going back home, coaching for the Bears. I started my coaching career with the Bears. I started working for Dave Wanstead back in 1999. He gave me my first opportunity, and that was a really cool thing. I mean, it really was. I enjoyed the heck out of it, and then obviously going to Andy's staff, and then from there, took a step back, became a linebackers coach for San Diego, and then a year and a half later, I get my opportunity, and we put together a pretty good defense. We finished in 2010 the #1 defense in the NFL, and that gave me the opportunity to become the head coach of Carolina. And that was something else. That was special. I mean, I had 9 good years there. I mean, my last 2 were tough.
Yeah.
But for 9 good seasons, I mean, I really come to love being in Charlotte, North Carolina, home of the Panthers, which was just a tremendous community of people. We got a lot of great support from those folks in that community. Had our Super Bowl run. We had the #1 pick my first year, and we drafted Cam Newton. Tremendous football player. He really is. It's so unfortunate he got hurt and hurt that shoulder because the guy was special. He really was. And, we had a lot of great guys.
That was an amazing season.
Yeah, it was. 2015 was special.
15-1, and then you blow through the NFC.
But the unfortunate thing was, I think in the NFC Championship game, we played our best game of the year. And unfortunately, we didn't follow it up in the Super Bowl. Got to give credit to Denver. They made a couple of plays early on, and from that point on, we were trying to catch up. So kudos to them. But I've got a lot of great fond memories of that 2015 team because of the young men that played. We had some really quality young men that were on that football team, and it would have been great to have won it with those guys.
Now, you didn't win it in the Super Bowl, but you got there. And maybe you can't answer this because you didn't get to experience the emotions of winning the Super Bowl as a head coach. But if you did, do you think one would have been more of a greater feeling as a player versus a coach to you?
I think as a player, it was fun. It was thrilling. As a coach, I believe it would have been satisfying, because you play this game, to get to the top and win it all. You coach this game because you want to get to the top and you want everybody to experience it. And that's what the gratification, that's what the satisfaction would have been more so than anything else, is just knowing that what we did impacted so many people. I mean, because as a player, you really think about what it means to you and the team. But as a coach, I always kind of felt it was deeper than that. It was about the community as well, not just the team. And so that's probably the one thing that my biggest regret of not winning is that we really didn't get to share it with the community because, like I said, we had a lot of tremendous support.
Coach, going from defensive coordinator to head coach, obviously your responsibilities quadruple. One of them is dealing with the media, and Coach Ditka is legendary for some of his media sessions after games, especially when it's coming after a loss and he's quite pissed off. How long did it take you to adjust to that responsibility, dealing with the media and a lot of the, let's be frank, idiotic questions that they would ask after games? Did it take you a long time, or did you adjust pretty fast?
No, I paid attention to what Coach Ditka went through. I paid attention to what Dave Wanstead went through watched Andy become just tremendous at it, and and watch Coach Smith and watch Coach Turner do their thing, and so I kind of had an idea of what to anticipate. I also grew up in Philadelphia, for 5 seasons under Andy, and that was a pretty tough media group. Let alone going back to Chicago, which was the second biggest market at the time. That was a big deal too. So I kind of had a little bit of exposure to that kind of media. But, answering the questions, being the one in charge, being the face of the franchise when it came to those things, that was kind of interesting. And probably the hardest thing for me too is like anytime something difficult came up, anytime there was something that was a huge distraction, I was thrust right in the middle of it. I had to answer those questions. So those were the things that I had to pay attention to was, try and make sure I handled what was important, not what was interesting.
Absolutely.
Wow. Yeah, you now are working for NFL Network. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's a really neat opportunity. I'll be doing some of the stuff on game day. I'll be doing some of the stuff on Good Morning Football at times. And it's just an opportunity to keep the connection with the league. Being part of the NFL Network now keeps me involved with the NFL. And, heck, this is what I've done. If you go back and look at it, 37 years of my career has been involved with the NFL. And so this is an opportunity to continue. I've really enjoyed my time so far at the NFL Network, getting to meet all the folks, getting to meet and work with the different personalities that are on air. The people that put the broadcast together are tremendous people. And it's a reflection of the league. It really is. And so, they really strive to make sure they bring a quality product to the fan base. And like I said, I'm enjoying myself.
Now you're away from coaching this year. You've been in coaching since, what was it? 99, 97, 99?
97.
Okay. So you coached for over 25 years in the league. You're not coaching this year. If a team comes calling some point after this season, because we all know there's 5 to 7, sometimes more NFL coaches that, get the so-called proverbial axe at the end of the season. If a team comes calling and says, hey, we want a guy who's experienced winner, been to the Super Bowl, do you have any interest in getting back into coaching?
A nice little trap question there, Dan. I'd have to seriously. Honestly, I would seriously consider it. It's something I've done all my life, and my last 4 years were very, very hard. They were very difficult, and so these next couple of months, being out of it, watching what's going on, will really tell me what I really want to do. But if it's the right team, the right situation, heck, I'm most certainly going to consider it probably. I right now it's still kind of early because I'm still kind of feeling this thing out. But at the end of the day, I don't know what I'm going to do other than, handle what's going on now. So I'm going to kind of approach this as we'll take it one day at a time, and we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Now you played defense. You're a defensive, coach, defensive coordinator. How involved does a defensive coach like you get involved in the offensive side of the game, or do you tend to rely more on somebody who's kind of special, an offensive coordinator, for example? What roles do you play? Because we see some coaches that are defensive minded. We see some that are offense. Some seem to want to be involved in both. Tell us about that.
What I've always done is I've always trusted the coordinator to make the best decision as far as play calls, and what plays they want to call. I do give feedback. I do give my opinion, but I trust them enough to let them call their games. I do make decisions though, situational decisions, whether we're going for something on 4th and down, whether we're going to punt, whether we're going to kick. Those types of things and are on me. Decision making on penalties, sometimes players, who we're playing. But for the most part, when it came to calling the plays, that was up to the coordinators.
Now, does Los, go ahead. You probably got another question or two.
Just one kind of final question for me is, in most circumstances, owners and GMs hire the coach. 49ers seem to be, correct me if I'm wrong, are they the only organization where the coach was hired first and then the coach handpicked the GM, as far as Kyle picking John Lynch? Is that something that we might see more in the future, where the coach is hired first and he handpicks a GM to work with, hand in hand with personnel and everything, or it's going to be the old school way most of the time?
I think for the most part, it's really just who the owner feels needs to be hired. If there's an opportunity to go out and get who they feel is one of the best young coaches, they're going to go out and do it. Or one of the best veteran coaches around, they're going to go do it. They're not going to wait. And I know in Buffalo they hired Sean McDermott before they hired Brandon Beane, and Brandon Beane has turned out to be one of the best GMs in the league, I think. And you're looking at Sean McDermott, who's one of the fine young coaches in this league. I shouldn't say fine young anymore. He's a veteran guy now. He's one of the more veteran coaches who's done a great job. I mean, so it's, as long as they work together, that's probably the biggest thing. That's probably the most important thing, yes, is they work together. And that's what you seem to have in San Francisco. You really do. I mean, Coach, Kyle's done such a great job, and John seems to understand what Kyle's looking for. And Kyle, kind of has a feel for what he needs to tell John. And so I think those two guys mesh about as well as anybody in the league has ever done. And look at the success they've had. Now, they haven't won it, but they've been there twice. So, eventually it's coming. I mean, and I'd say this too. I think that's a team that has an opportunity to be in the NFC Championship game, and let alone the opportunity to get back to the Super Bowl. I mean, I could see that happen.
Now, with any head coaching job or any profession for that matter, where you're in the limelight, a lot of criticism comes your way. I mean, people criticize Kyle and they say he can't win the big one. He gets, takes 4 out of 5 NFC championships. And some people, even in the Bay Area, would like to see him go. Everybody gets it. How do you deal with the constant criticism? Do you just shut that out? Do you read about that stuff, or because it's constant in Major League Sports, or even any sport really?
Yeah. I can tell you this honestly. I don't read it. I don't listen to it. I might catch something on television, but I really don't. I mean, now my wife used to tell me, "Hey, you might want to look this up, or you might want to have your PR guy bring this to you." But I usually stayed out. I really did. I mean, I little saying is, let's focus on what's important, not what's interesting. And unless that statement started with the owner said this, what I'm saying, to me, because there was really only one voice that I really worried about. And that was when I was in Carolina. It was Jerry Richardson, the owner at the time. And in Washington, it was Dan Snyder at the time. I mean, those were the voices you listened to. Everybody else, that was just people talking. That was just noise. And it's hard because everybody has an opinion. But until you're the one who has to do it, you'll never know. I mean, I just tell people, hey, don't draw me a map unless you've been there. And so to have somebody that's never done what I'm doing, tell me, hey, you ought to do this, you ought to do that. I don't know about that unless you've had practical experience. Now, I will say this. One of the best things I did was in 2013, in January 2013, on January 8th, I reached out to John Madden and asked him if he and I could visit and sit down and talk football. Asked him to basically mentor me. And Coach was phenomenal. And he was somebody I could pick the phone up, call, and he would help. And he was tremendous. I have about 25, 35 sheets of notes that I've transcribed, and I've kept them, and I read them, and they're everything from words of wisdom to great stories. And they were really, really cool. Just the fact that he was willing to give me an opportunity to visit with him, and then to give me guidance. And because when I had my original coaching staff, I made the mistake of not hiring a former NFL head coach. And so I didn't have somebody in there sitting there telling me, in my ear saying, hey, you missed this. Hey, think about that. Hey, that's good. That's good. Let's do that again. You know what I'm saying? So when I would sit there and talk to him about the things that we did, he would always tell me, hey, this is good. Now I'll think about that. One thing he told me, he said, hey, Ron, just remember, every time you get ready for training camp, you can't start where you left off. You got to start at the beginning. You can't miss the fundamentals. Stay to the basics. And so that's how we would start every training camp. We would go right back to the basics and work our way up to the top again. And
wow.
It was really, it was some great advice. The
That's
man
great.
The man was a savant.
Oh, love John Madden. Well, you and I are about the same age. Los is just a few years younger than us. We all grew up in the Bay Area. So you grew up with John Madden. Yep. And he was unbelievable. But I'm sure back then, we had to listen to the games. We didn't get to see every game. So we got Bill King every Sunday.
Yeah, that's right.
And Bill King and Lon Simmons for the 49ers. So,
icons.
Yeah, we were pretty fortunate. I was listening to a highlight just the other day. I saw it on Twitter, and I was like, wow, the A's had Lon Simmons and Bill King announcing the same game. I was like, two of the biggest icons in Bay Area announcers of all time, Bill King and Lon Simmons. And they were it was a play when Ricky Henderson broke the stolen base record and at the Coliseum. And the Coliseum was packed, Coach. It was like 50,000 people. And I was like, wow, the A's, had they got the right ownership, they would be hopping right now in the Bay Area. They would, if Joe Lacob, the Warriors owner, owned the Oakland A's, I think they'd have a new stadium somewhere waterfront, and they'd be packing the house. And I think it would be great because it would actually make the Giants better, because competition breeds success, I believe.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Was Joe Starkey the announcer for Cal when Ron was there?
Yep, he was.
And I was in the booth.
What year were
and he did the 49ers when I played
he did.
in the NFL too.
What year was the Cal Stanford big play?
83.
82.
82, excuse me. 82.
Kevin Mullen.
That must have been just the biggest party that night ever after that game. Oh my God.
Campus was rocking. We had a great time. We really celebrated it, and it's so famous, and it's people try to copy it all the time, but the truth of the matter is, but you can't, because it was the first, and that's the thing that I think people got to remember is it was
the band is on the field.
Ron, Coach, honestly, were you sitting down like this game is over, or were you standing up? Did you get a chance to see that?
Well, I saw it. What had happened was, they scored, take the lead. I'm on the sideline and just total disgust, and then all of a sudden we see the squib kick, and then something's happened. Then we're watching, and now we're running onto the field right after Kevin Mullen scores, and it was just euphoria at that point.
What was wild, if you watch that play over and over again, Merritt Ford somehow no look past. He just was running, and he just flipped it over his head, and in one stride, Mullen catches it and runs it in.
Thank God for no instant replay at that time, because maybe one of those guys' knees might have been down.
It was close.
But see, that's the best part. You just said might have.
Right, exactly.
So because it would have been inconclusive, they couldn't have turned it over.
No.
Yeah, that was wild. That was so wild, because I think that was the year after my brother graduated, right? Yeah, he graduated he left in 81.
No, he left in 80.
Was it 80? Yeah, your first year was his last year, right?
Yeah. 80 was my freshman year, and then he graduated that spring, and then 2 years later we had the big play. Yeah.
Now, as a freshman, you were playing. You got playing time. You were playing a lot, right?
I also got hurt. It was the only time I was injured in my college career, and that was I had a high ankle sprain, We didn't know at the time the difference between a high ankle sprain and an ankle sprain. So what happened was, it was taking me forever to get healthy again. Everybody kept going, what's going on? I said, I don't know. All I know is I can't run the way I used to run right now. And I really wasn't better until probably mid-November. It happened. It happened in our third regular season game. We played 2 on the road. We went to Florida. We went to Army, and then we came home for Texas A&M, I think it was. And I got whacked on the side of the leg, and man, I'd never been hurt like that.
Wow. Yeah, I've heard high ankle sprains they're almost
painful.
Well,
they're painful.
Yeah, and back then nobody knew the difference.
Right.
So you're treating an ankle sprain, and it's not an ankle sprain. It's actually the 2 bones in the leg and the ligament that go up the leg. Those things move, and that area gets traumatized, and that's where the issues come from. Yeah. So it was a big difference.
So I guess my brother Ron, was he the captain of the defense at that time?
Yep. My freshman year, Ronnie was was one of the captains.
Okay. Yeah. But man, I loved watching those games. I used to go to all of them. So I was just I think I was what was I when he was a senior? I think I was a senior in high school. So yeah.
Wow.
Or no, I would have been. Let's see. You graduated in 80 in high school, right? Yep. So yeah, I graduated the same year. So when you were playing, I was a freshman in college. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So
great Cal,
man,
great Cal.
Been great having you on, Ron. I really
it,
appreciate you coming on. It's been a real treat, and wish you all the success at the NFL Network, and would love to see you back in coaching again. I think the game needs you back in coaching.
Well, like I said, we'll cross that bridge when times come, and maybe we can do this again during the season at some point.
That would be great. Would love to catch up, get your viewpoints on the season, what you see happening, who you think might, be the teams to beat. Do you have a Super Bowl favorite right now going into it at this point of the season?
Well, I'll be honest with you. Like I said, I think the 49ers right now are the elite in the NFC. I mean, they're who everybody's gunning for. Detroit will be nipping at their heels. And the big question will be Philadelphia or Dallas coming out of the East. That's what everybody's kind of concerned with. And it's funny because the NFC South, nobody's really paying attention to. So that will be an interesting. Yeah. Now the team that I'm going to pick as an NFC dark horse that could make some noise. I'm not going to say could win it all, but they can make some noise. Is going to be the Bears. I think they had a very good offseason. I think they did some really good. Yeah, I think they did some really good things in free agency, and then obviously getting Caleb was a huge deal for them. So they'll be one of the teams to watch that I think should make some big strides this year. And again, to me, the 49ers in the AFC, until somebody beats Kansas City, they knock them off. Kansas City is still at the top. They're still my favorite going into it. Cincinnati seems to be a thorn every now and then in their side. They seem to kind of flare up every now and then and get after them. 2 teams to keep an eye on, I think, are Houston and Jacksonville. I like CJ.
I like Houston.
I like
CJ
I like
Houston
a lot. I think what D'Amico Ryans has done has been tremendous, but also credit to what they've done as far as their personnel department, putting all those players in position, and now having D'Amico lead that team. So it's going to be I think it's going to be a good football season this year as far as competition. And we're going to see a couple of teams rise up and really, I think, challenge both San Francisco and Kansas City this year.
Always surprise teams.
Yeah. Before we let you go real quick, couple of quick questions on your way out. Some of our chat members. Red just says, cheers to Ron. Love seeing you on. That's great. That's Shell. Mark Graves asked this question. Ron, which running back when you were playing was the hardest to bring down?
Barry Sanders. because he was the hardest one to hit. Honestly. I mean, I will say this: Marcus Allen, other than Walter Payton, Marcus Allen was my favorite running back. I played against Marcus, and I loved playing against him in college, and loved playing against him in the NFL. And I think he really, deservedly so as a Hall of Famer. But he was so elusive, so powerful, such great balance that Barry Sanders was really difficult to bring completely down to the ground. Because he, first of all, you never really got a good hard shot on him. Secondly, if you tried to arm tackle him, he typically broke those tackles. But at the same time, if you lunged and took your shot, he was so elusive, he could stop and start and dodge that he was probably the guy, in my opinion, the hardest guy to tackle.
Yeah, you didn't know which way he was going when he stopped. He could. Yeah. Last question, let you go. As a coach now, not as a player, as a coach, who was the toughest head coach, one or two guys that come to mind that were toughest to game plan against?
Well, as a coach, Sean Payton, I think he was one of the really terrific game planners. I really do. I always felt this is a guy that always, came into a game with a couple of different thoughts on how he wanted to attack you, because he adjusted so well if you were doing something different. And I think he may have found something in Denver with this young quarterback that he's got. I think he's got a chance to be pretty doggone good.
Oh, yeah, Bo Nix. Yeah.
Yeah, I really do. I like his gumption, and I think that's one thing that's really caught Sean's eye is how tough this kid is. And I think guys that were hard to play against, obviously were Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. I mean, those guys were just tough guys to play against, just because they had so much leeway in their offenses that you try to plan for certain elements in their game and they change it on their own, and that was always tough.
Wow. Well, Ron, again, thank you so much. We'll do this again during maybe middle of the season. We'll connect, and thanks so much again.
Sorry about the technical difficulties, but
no worries. We got it worked out. That's okay. It happens. It happens.
If I could just add, Coach, your story is very motivational to me from a son that lost two parents to that wicked disease. So continued blessings, continued health to you and your family. And thanks for coming on. Thank you.
I appreciate you saying so, Carlos. Thank you guys. And look forward to talking again. All right.
Okay. Yes, thanks. Coach Ron Rivera, everybody. All right. Yeah. You just hit that little leave studio. That'll take you out right there. So, all right, everybody. Well, what a treat, man. That was awesome. Worth the wait, man.